Okay, Kitsiksimatsimokpoa. This is going to be the first part of a two-part lecture on the lunar cycle Iitao'tsstoyi, which is the first winter moon in the Blackfoot calendar. The winter has 7 moons, and this is the one that comes in normally sometime in around the month of October on the Gregorian calendar. So sometime during that month, you'll have a new moon, and when the first sliver comes, that first sliver is the beginning of Iitao'tsstoyi, when the cold arrives. And so we see a rapid transition. In Blackfoot, there's no spring or fall per se. The 2 seasons are winter and summer. So you always have 7 winter moons. You have 5 to 6 summer moons depending on the year. And we do have language like moto and moko for spring and fall, but they're really more like, the way I look at them, they're more like dusk and dawn. They don't count as seasons in the same manner that dusk and dawn are just little transitions during the day. The real breakdown for day is day and night, right? So we have day and night, summer and winter, hot and cold, south and north, male and female, all of these kind of structures to the Blackfoot way of thinking. So Iitao'tsstoyi, when the cold arrives, and this is an image of my site, and one of the things that typically happens, well, that always happens during this lunar cycle, is that the beavers are creating their food caches. And often at my site, they create it in this particular pattern. You can see the beaver lodge there on the left-hand side. And then a round food cache pile right in front of the lodge. A little mound that is a scent mound. Further out than that, and then even further out, a crescent-shaped food cache. And this happens to be the same design that's used in what are called big offerings for the Iitao'tsstoyi, the winter ceremonies in Blackfoot. And it would be, the circle would be the sun, the small mound would be the morning star, and the crescent would be the moon. So I find it fascinating that the beavers use the same pattern. And they do it during this lunar cycle. But the lunar cycle itself is, of course, named after the rapid shift in temperature that occurs for us this time of year. And you start seeing that occur, or start to see that materializing through foggy mornings. SC Nazi in Blackfoot. It's saying that it looks like there's particles in the air, steam or dust. SC Nazi. So, of course, this occurs when the air above is cooler than the earth itself, right? So you get the cold air coming in suddenly, and the warmer earth, warmer water creates the fog. So that's one of the signs of the rapid change. Another one is, of course, the leaves falling off the trees. The leaves turn golden orange rather quickly, and then one day we'll have a good windstorm and they'll just all come popping off and fill the forest with leaves. And eventually, sometime in Iitao'tsstoyi, sometimes it's right at the beginning, sometimes it's not till near the end, but at some point we have Iitao'tsstoyi, the wolf cap, which is a snowstorm. It's a sticky, wet snow that comes in. It's a heavy snow, and it's a dangerous snow. And in the past, people were told not to go outside, during the Iitao'tsstoyi, because it's too dangerous. If you were leaving camp and you were going hunting, a ways off, if you were a day's hike away or something like that, it gets just too wet, too cold. You can soak through really easy, get hypothermia and die, and I'm sure plenty of people had in the past died in that fashion. So this is our first really big snowstorm of the season, and it'll definitely come sometime during this lunar cycle. Iitao'tsstoyi. Right now, as I'm giving this lecture, we've just had our Iitao'tsstoyi for the year. In fact, I went out and took this photo just yesterday morning. And we're only in the first quarter of the lunar cycle. So sometimes it happens at the beginning, like I say. Sometimes it takes a while, and there can be more than one. Our first kind of wave of snowstorms can be wet and dangerous like this, sticking to everything. This storm is also associated with a kind of a bundle, which is the wolf cap itself. Here you see a couple of Akatapi, people from the past, wearing the wolf cap. I think the gentleman on the right hand side is called, his name was Far Away, and this guy on the left hand side, I don't know who he is. But people that had wolf caps, men that had wolf caps transferred to them, generally had some skills at predicting and possibly relating to weather, and being able to call on storms, and being able to usher them off. So these guys have some special skills to be able to have these. It just isn't a hat that anybody can just make and wear. It's something that was transferred. And a lot of the weather dancers in the past had these kind of hats. So, and these are the wolf caps. These are associated with this storm, Iitao'tsstoyi. So, what do I see normally in this time of year? Lots of things going on in this lunar cycle, and I can only, of course, just show you part of what is typical. The Xikomachkaiks, which are the swans, are always here during this lunar cycle. They pass through Blackfoot territory twice a year, and they usually show up during Awakatsikitsum, during the deer moon. And then I'll, as a Iachkimi, as a beaver man, I'll know once I start seeing the swans that I've basically got one lunar cycle before it's time to do the bundle closing for the end of summer. And then the same way at the end of winter, usually during Matsi Kapisaki, the frog moon, we'll see the swans coming through again. And again, I'll be signaled that I've got about one lunar cycle before I open the beaver bundle. So there's two types of swans that we see coming through. One of them is the trumpeter swans, these guys, Imachkaiks. And the other one is the tundra swan, Iitao'tsstoyi. And when you look at them, you can see, one of the differences you notice right away is that the tundra swans have this little yellow kind of teardrop under the eye that the trumpeters don't. But they also got a somewhat different voice. And swans are considered one of the sacred birds in Blackfoot way of life in Iitao'tsstoyi. Swans, in some of the stories, carry human beings from the earth, transport them to the sky world to meet the sun. And one of the most famous stories, of course, of this happening is in Bawakski, Scarface, the Scarface story. Swans who carry him across Motoyahki, basically the atmosphere, but the waters above, the big waters above. Some people translate it, I think, mistranslated as the ocean. It wasn't the ocean he crossed, it was the atmosphere, which is considered another kind of water, Motoyahki, the water above. So swans carry him across, and he came back with the original sweat lodge, as well as the scalp lock suits, shirts and leggings, sun design on that scalp lock suit, sweet grass, and a buxipistan. Buxipistan is the leader's bundle of the Horn Society, which has some swan skin on it. So the swans were one of the birds that's taboo from eating. You're not supposed to eat swans. And they helped in various ways. They gave different things to human beings. One of the things they gave was their cries. So you hear if you go to Akokats and the Sundance at Standoff at Blood Tribe at the Horn Society, when they're dancing, you'll hear the men making the swan calls. It's a warrior's call. It's also a warrior's call that came from the geese, but this one's particular to the horns. So yeah, you'll hear them calling, the swans call, and you'll see a buxipistan, the bundle that has the swan's skins, the leader of the horns. And yeah, it's a sacred bird, so you're not supposed to eat it. Now, a lot of people are extrapolating from this, generalizing, and saying that you're not supposed to eat any waterfowl if you've been in the horns. And since I'm not a horns elder, I can't really firmly express my opinion on that, but I don't think that's the case. Eggs were, as you'll find in this course, waterfowl eggs were very important food sources, celebrated in ritual with songs about how they give people long life, celebrated in the beaver bundle complex. And usually somebody that was taking care of a beaver bundle had already been through the horns, yet they're eating waterfowl eggs. And I have a lot of elders' testimony about different ways to hunt ducks in the past. So my understanding is that the swan you're not supposed to eat it. But other waterfowl, it's a different story. Another one of the big events that you start seeing this time of year, and I should say, even though, Xikomachkaiks, they arrive during Awakatsikism, during the deer moon. They're still around during this moon, very much so throughout the whole lunar cycle, so that's why I include them here. But they didn't just arrive here during this time. They're more congregating, preparing to migrate, forming into bigger groups. Similarly, the snow geese. Iitao'tsstoyi. Iitao'tsstoyi means black-tipped wings. And Xikomachkai means the white big gull. So swans are categorized as a kind of a gull in the Blackfoot taxonomy. Gulls are kaiks. So Xikomachkai is the white big gull. Iitao'tsstoyi is the black-tipped wing feathers, the snow geese. And here in the middle of Blackfoot territory where I live, we get huge congregations of snow geese, making big rafts covering, the half of a large lake, and just thousands and thousands of them. But further south, outside of Blackfoot territory, they get even larger congregations as they move on. So we just see them here during the 2 times a year, during the 2 transition times. But at this time in particular, the summer to winter transition, they kind of stick around a little bit more. So during this lunar cycle, Iitao'tsstoyi, there's a couple of lakes that they like to use. They just don't use anywhere. They like certain places. So you can go to those certain places and find thousands of them. Sterling Lake is one of them. And there's another lake just southeast of Sterling where they congregate. Forget the name of that lake, but that's where you see the most of them. The Iitao'tsstoyi, the beavers themselves during this lunar cycle, as I mentioned at the beginning, they're storing food. They're making their winter food cache, and they're shoring up their lodges. They're fixing up the walls of their lodges, making them strong. Coyotes will try to get at them. The beavers don't hibernate. They're active all season long, but they're locked under the ice in the winter. And if something is able to break into their lodge, it's big trouble for them. It's not survivable. So they shore up their lodges pretty tight. They leave some little seams open for air, fresh air to move in and out, little chimneys. And later in the winter, we'll see, the way that those chimneys work, the way that they function. But they're always shoring up their walls and making them stronger, packing mud on. And when that mud freezes, that mud and plant material becomes like a cement. It's really strong. There's no coyotes getting through there. One of the concepts that I wanted to introduce for this lunar cycle is this notion, Iitao'tsstoyi. Iitao'tsstoyi means we're going to say it again. And as you go through this course with me, you're going to hear some things repeated. When I talk about each of the animals and their Blackfoot contributions, I might mention them during this lunar cycle. I might mention something about the swans, for instance. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to repeat myself when we get to the next time the swans pass through, because it bears repeating. And this is the way that what they call the oral tradition. I don't really consider Iitao'tsstoyi Sinona oral tradition. I consider it a full body tradition, an entirely embodied tradition. Everything that I've learned in context, not only with people telling me things, but there's certain scents. There's smudge that's made that's associated with different things. There's the smell of different foods. There's tastes associated with different things, with different parts of the knowledge. There's dance. There's movement. There's work, hard work. Like what the Beavers doing here. There's all of these different sensory experiences. When you're transferred something, it's done to your body, your full body, not just to your ears. So it's inaccurate to say that it's just an oral tradition. That is just a polemic created in relation to literacy. It's true that it's not a literacy tradition, but it's much more than just oral. In any case, though, the things that are said, you do have to say them again and again. And it's not just the saying, you have to do things again and again. And in this course, that's the reason why you're visiting your sites, the same site, again and again and again, a couple of times a week, all year long. And probably if you complete this course, you're going to be the kind of person who's going to continue to go to that site and learn and learn and learn. So it's not just about introducing something once. And so, bear with me if you feel like in any of these lectures, you've already told us that. That's okay, because sometimes you're able to catch something that I say the first time around. And maybe you'll catch some nuance of it that was intended. But there may be, sometimes you don't catch those nuances. You might have heard it just fine, but you didn't understand all the aspects of it that I intended. But after you have more experience with phenological study, you may, hear me say the same thing again, but you'll understand something different about it. So that's also part of the importance of saying things again. And the Beavers, just like this, they just don't make their lodge and that's it. They're constantly remaking their lodge. Not making it brand new, but, piling on mud, and the natural erosion process, some of it washes away eventually, and they pile on more. And that's kind of like time, hey? With our minds. Time and distance from something can make us lose memory. So we got to keep packing it on. Iitao'tsstoyi. We're going to say it again. One of the stories that I'll probably tell a few times is in regard to the mallard drakes, in particular, the males. Iitao'tsstoyi. Iitao'tsstoyi is the name for the mallard ducks, and it means they have a red leg. Iitao'tsstoyi. But at this time of year, during this lunar cycle, and a little bit during Iitao'tsstoyi, some during the deer moon as well, the moon preceding this, the mallard drakes return to their families after having been gallivanting around with groups of male buddies for the summer, basically running around, partying, and having their way with vulnerable single young women. Now is the time when they come back to their wives. Their wives who've labored, all summer, tending to a nest, incubating eggs, raising the young, teaching the children. Now the mallard drakes come back and apologize. So I don't know what was going on with me. I don't know what I was thinking. just confused, and I still love you. It'll never happen again. If you take me back, it'll never happen again. They get taken back. They get taken back. But out at your sites, you're going to hear the voice of the women, of the female mallards. They're the ones that go, ah, 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 ah. Male mallards don't do that sound. That's the female yelling at her spouse. Come here, come here. Just keeping him in check. Another water bird you probably will see if you're in Blackfoot territory are the American coots. Iitao'tsstoyi means they got white noses. Iitao'tsstoyi. And these are a really funny bird. Some people call them mud hens. They're really odd waterfowl. They got legs and feet like chickens. They don't have webbing. Their beaks are very much more like chicken type of beaks. But they get along in the water. And their young are not born like able to get right out. Their young are born blind and unable to get out of the nest right away and stuff, which is odd for a water bird as well. But they get along in the water. They get along. And they are a shallow diving duck, or shallow diving bird. I shouldn't even call them a duck. They eat a lot of plant material. At my site, they eat milfoil the most. And of course, they get a lot of invertebrates mixed in with that milfoil. So they're getting plant material, they're getting insect material. So they're really kind of omnivores, even though they focus on feeding on the plants themselves. And if you've done your study through the summer with me, you know that one of their values of the coot families is in sharing. They are taught to share. So bear that in mind, because another duck that comes through, these guys are always here, but at my site, at Spobikimi, at the pond where I do my studies, I don't see them all summer long. I see them right at the end of winter, right at the beginning of summer, right at the end of winter, and right at the end of summer. Or beginning of winter, beginning of summer. In these moons, they're in the transition. So Iitao'tsstoyi, I'll see them come through. And these are the American widgeons. This is a new name for them that the elders put together after one of my students at Red Crow College did a study to try to come up with some names for some of the birds that we lost the names for. So they gave this bird the name Sasksimokgohtuki sa'e. Sasksimokgohtuki sa'e, which means the green-eared duck. Sasksimoko is the color of new grass. Gohtuki is an ear. Sa'e is a duck. Sasksimokgohtuki sa'e. The green-eared duck, because during the breeding part of the year, that little lens you see over the ear area of their head, that's charcoal colored now this time of year. During the breeding time, it's very bright green. They got kind of a white mohawk. These guys, they breed in Blackfoot territory, but just not at my site. So at some of your sites, you might see them nesting, but I've never witnessed that at my sites. But what I do see is that they come through, they stop in, and they're usually around for a week or so. And while they're at my site, they get assistance from the coots, because the coots are able to go down and get milfoil, and the widgeons not necessarily so. Sometimes they can't reach it. So here you see a female widgeon who's going to get fed by the coots, and the coots are generous in that way, just as they train their young to be generous. And as we get in summer, I'll explain how that all works. But yeah, they do pick out food for themselves, and they pick out food for some of the other ducks, and they share it with them. Buffleheads are another duck that I'll see come through. And I don't think they nest in Blackfoot territory, at least if they do, it's maybe up really further north. But I think I really just don't know enough about them. I only see them during these transitions. So for all I know, they could be an Arctic bird. But they do come through. And we don't have a Blackfoot name for them, or at least not one that's remembered. But you might see some of these birds at your sites. One bird that I do see at my site during this lunar cycle is Mochgummi, the great blue heron. And these guys do breed in Blackfoot territory. They breed in rookeries with kind of congregations of birds up in trees and on stands and these kind of things. And they breed to the south of me, they breed to the north of me. I'm right in the middle of their territory, but it just happens they don't breed at my site. But I do see them come through during Iitao'tsstoyi, because the waters at my site are usually a little bit more shallow then, especially at the south end of my pond. And they'll go through and they'll pick out northern pike. And they'll eat some pretty large fish. I mean, this isn't the largest pike I've seen one of them gobble down. They'll take some really large fish that you wouldn't believe they can actually swallow. And they'll line them up and swallow them whole. Another heron that visits just during this time is Sipipiksi, the night bird. And this is another new name coined by the Blackfoot elders who worked with my student. The English name is a black-crowned night heron. And these birds are prone to hunting at night. They like frogs and small fish and these kind of things. And they also breed in rookeries around Blackfoot territory, but just not at my site. So I only see them when they're coming through at the usually at the end of the season, at the end of the summer, during this time. Iitao'tsstoyi. This is a juvenile here. I tend to see more juveniles than adults at my site, but on the occasion I'll see the adult. For smaller passerines, one of the ones that comes around in Iitao'tsstoyi is Sikotokani, the black-eyed junco. And Sikotokani in Blackfoot translates as a black head. Black head. Just a little junco, seed-eating kind of bird. And we get lots of American tree sparrows. Which I don't have a Blackfoot name for. The catbirds, robins, yellow warblers, kingbirds. Lots of the other passerines leave as we move into Iitao'tsstoyi. And these others, like Sikotokan, like American tree swallow, are more prevalent. We still have Iitao'tsstoyi, who are the northern flickers. Usually the male ones, like this one. You see the little red mustache, they say. That red mustache indicates it's a male bird. And while even at my site right now, most of the females have left, there's still a couple of males around. And I usually have a couple of males all winter. But that tends to happen more in kind of urban areas where they can be sure somehow to get some food. They can go up into the neighborhoods when they're desperate and visit feeders. But for the most part, they have to leave. And the males will try to stick around if they can, just so that they can keep their territories, their breeding territories. The male kind of owns the territory. And when the females come in, they'll just choose males based on who has the best trees and cavity making areas. One of the things that's happening here in Secaucus in Lethbridge right now is that the development companies have been making buildings and houses that have these pillars that are made of a kind of a dense foam. And the northern flickers have figured out that this is good stuff to, easy to build cavities in, nice and warm to nest in. And so they're causing people all kinds of grief here because they're just digging in. I was called to a hotel here where they had, many millions of dollars recently spent on renovation, and they put in, these giant pillars all the way around the hotel made of this stuff. And the flickers are just going to town building cavity nests, and they want to know what to do about it. And I told them, well, there's not a whole lot you can do except for put something reinforced over it, like if you put a steel mesh or something over the top of the pillar and stucco it in so that it looks nice. But then you're talking about spending a lot more money again. But trapping the birds or killing the birds is not going to be a solution because they figured this out. They know what they're dealing with now, and they're going to continue to come back and use these resources for nesting. So they're going to have to spend the money because they didn't think about the ecology when they chose their building materials. The northern flicker is one of the birds that we see in a lot of the bundles. And this is now, like in my beaver bundle, we have one of these that has a red shafted feathers, and we have another one that has a yellow shafted feathers. And in the past, in Western ornithology, they were considered two different birds, a red shafted flicker and a yellow shafted flicker. Now I think everybody just considers them one species, northern flicker, and you can get hybrids between the two. In Blackfoot, they've just always been considered one species, Iitao'tsstoyi Lecture. But their quills were used in the past in the designs of the emblems used on the original scalp lock suits from the Scarface story. The red flicker quills were used. And also they're prized by, warriors would use them for war medicine, because when you're looking at a flicker, he can jump to the other side of the tree like nothing. And so that dodging was something that the warriors wanted. So if you were going to war, you might go to a Niachkimi, to a beaver man, and have Iitao'tsstoyi transferred to you. And like the birds in my bundle have little ties so that they can be tied to the warrior's hair and worn in battle to help them dodge any dangers. Iitao'tsstoyi. And this name Iitao'tsstoyi has to do with the red shafts of the feathers. Another bird that you might see at your sites, it's very common in Blackfoot territory, is Iitao'tsstoyi, the great horned owl. And in Blackfoot, Iitao'tsstoyi means meager ears. So it's kind of the opposite of what he actually has. It's kind of a teasing name almost, Iitao'tsstoyi. But these are very important birds associated with Nenapska bundles, thunderpipes. And a lot of people have kind of been trained, again, this is another generalization like what we saw with the swan. A lot of people have been trained to think that seeing an owl is a bad omen. That's not the case in Blackfoot tradition. What is the case is that the owls are associated with the Nenapska bundles. And so people who were Nenapskiks in the past, Nenapskiks, the people who took care of thunderpipes in the past, if one of their descendants is in dire need of warning, something is threatening them, and they're oblivious to it, a past Nenapska might come to them, a spirit might come to them in the form of an owl to give them warning. And so if an owl is exhibiting strange behavior, that's when you want to be concerned. And it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, it's a warning. So now you have an opportunity to do something about it. Have a sweat. Get your face painted on one of the bundles. Do something to protect yourself. But in general, these owls are all over the Blackfoot territory, and if you're not seeing them, it's because you don't go outside. You should be seeing them. At my site, I have an area that I call the Owl Wood, where there was a pair of great horned owls that nested for several years in a row. They'll tend to use the same nests or the same areas to nest year after year after year. A couple of years ago, the couple at my site passed away. So I don't expect to see them back this winter, but if they were coming back, it would be during this lunar cycle, Iitao'tsstoyi, that they would come. And then they would roost in that area for the rest of the winter until Iitao'tsstoyi, which is usually sometime in February, the eagle moon. Then they would nest. So they're one of the first birds to nest. And again, we will repeat this when it comes to Iitao'tsstoyi. We'll talk about this again. But they are known to be very fierce. Like in terms of birds, they're the toughest bird in Blackfoot territory. They'll chase eagles out of their nests and steal their nests. They're the only ones that will successfully hunt coyotes, skunks. They're tough birds. So you don't want to mess with them. They can kill humans. But if you do have a pair at your site, enjoy it. They'll be there all winter, and there'll be opportunities to learn from them about the rodent population at your site and learn other things as well. All right, so this is the last of the birds that I'm just going to talk about for this lunar cycle, and I think we're going to move into mammals and insects and plant life, but I'm going to save that for the part 2 of the lecture. So for today, we'll stop right here, and of course, if you have any questions about anything in the lecture or something that you noticed that I might not have hit on, that needed to be said, let me know online in our discussion boards. And yeah, you can learn these names, especially if you're in Blackfoot territory and you're especially if you're Blackfoot. You should learn these names. I don't expect everybody to learn them. When I used to teach this course at Red Crow College, I did expect everybody to learn them. There would be exams after during every new moon that would be cumulative, so people had to know these names, these Blackfoot names. But because we have participants in the course that are from various parts of North America and beyond, I'm not going to expect you to learn all these names. But if you are Blackfoot and you are living in Blackfoot territory, you should learn them. And in either case, I mean, this is just an example of the connections that occur between today we talked about climate and we talked about birds and their connections to the people. So we will continue on next week with some of the mammals and insects and plants for this lunar cycle.